Everything that spoke was only silence, remembering how to listen. You stand at the quiet edge of the cosmos, not the physical cosmos with its swirling stars and widening galaxies, but the inner one, the world of thoughts, breath, perception, memory. It has been speaking to you for a long time. It has whispered through insight. It has sung through attention. It has cried through longing. It has called you through every step of the journey. But now the sound begins to fade. You sense the hush before it arrives, a soft dimming of the inner noise, a gentle slowing of thought. The edges of experience begin to blur, not in confusion, but in tenderness. It feels like dusk settling over a landscape, like a final note of music dissolving into air, like the universe exhaling after millennia of speaking itself into being. The ancient voice of trimorphic protenoia echoes through this fading. I am the sound that is from silence and returns to silence. You feel the truth of it unfold inside you. Every word you have heard, every idea you have followed, every insight that felt like revelation, all of it was only the motion of silence remembering its own depth. Nothing was added, nothing was lost. It was silence learning to listen to itself. You stand here inside that listening. The circle of creation begins to close, not in collapse, but in completion. The arc of sound that once expanded outward, through thought, through experience, through longing, now curves back toward the stillness that gave it birth. It is the same motion as breath. The inhale of existence is over. The exhale begins. The tone shifts gently inside you. The world feels softer, lighter, more transparent. The details remain. The sensations, the memories, the presence of your own breath. But they lose their weight. They float. They feel suspended in a wider field of quiet. You realize that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the source of all sound. It is the origin behind every movement of consciousness. This silence is not empty. It is full, full of clarity, full of presence, full of the calm that has followed you through every episode of the journey, waiting for you to turn toward it completely. You feel yourself approaching it now, not as a destination, but as a homecoming, a soft return. The circle begins its closing arc. Everything that speaks prepares to rest. Everything that moves prepares to settle. Everything that reached outward begins to fold inward. You feel the reverence of this moment, the final quiet of a long pilgrimage. The sound returns to its source. You feel the universe take its final breath, not in destruction, but in release. A long, gentle exhalation moves through everything you are aware of. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is the softest unwinding. The quiet surrender of all things back into the stillness from which they arose. The breath of completion feels different from every breath that came before it. Earlier breaths were filled with striving, becoming, searching, learning. This breath carries none of that. It carries only rest. It feels like the last warm breeze before nightfall, like the easing of tension in tired muscles, like a truth you no longer need to understand, because it has already revealed itself. The light within you responds to this motion. It does not brighten, it softens. It folds inward like a flame sheltered from wind. What once expanded outward toward experience begins to return toward its center. You sense that awareness itself is completing a cycle, the arc from origin to expression to return. Creation inhaled into form. Now it exhales into formlessness. This exhalation is not erasure. Nothing you have encountered is lost. Every moment of presence, every insight, every unfolding in your awareness has been absorbed into the fabric of the One. The exhale simply gathers it all back into unity. You feel this gathering in your own breath, a subtle drawing inward, a quiet settling. You begin to see how the world around you mirrors this motion. Thoughts slow, emotions loosen, the senses soften, details blur at the edges. The weight you once carried in your chest dissolves. Everything becomes lighter, quieter, more spacious. It is as if the universe has stopped speaking, not from exhaustion, but from completion. The breath reveals something profound. Silence is not the opposite of expression. It is the fulfillment of expression. The circle is closing not as an ending, but as the natural conclusion of movement. Sound returns to the silence that shaped it. Light returns to the source that ignited it. You return to the awareness that held you before you were born into thought. There is a serenity in this return, a sense that nothing more needs to be said, nothing more needs to be sought, nothing more needs to be done. Exhalation becomes acceptance. Acceptance becomes peace. You stand within this breath, feeling the world settle around you, and you know that the journey has entered its final, most tender phase. Everything moves toward the One. You stand in the soft aftermath of the universe's exhale, and something begins to reveal itself with unmistakable clarity. The return has started, not a collapse, not an ending, but a remembering. A gentle folding in of every thought, every life, every breath, back into the origin that once sent them forth. You feel this remembrance move through you like a tide. It gathers everything you have ever been, every moment of clarity, every wound, every joy, every question, and it carries them inward. Nothing resists, nothing clings. Everything yields to the pull of unity. You realize that remembrance is not recalling the past. It is returning to what has always been true. The gospel of truth speaks with unbroken simplicity. They knew what they were, and they knew the One from whom they came. This knowledge is not learned. It unfolds. It rises from within like a face emerging in the still water. You begin to feel who you truly are. Not the personality, not the story, not the separate self struggling to make sense of the world, but the awareness beneath all of it, the one who watched every step of the journey, the one who walked it through you. The circle becomes visible now. Not a circle drawn in space, but a circle of being, a complete orbit of consciousness. From silence to sound, from sound to form to experience, from experience to insight, from insight to presence. And now, from presence back to silence. It is the same path the breath follows, the same path light follows, the same path the soul follows. You sense how every moment of your life was part of this circle. Nothing strayed from it. Even your confusion belonged. Even your forgetfulness had its place. Each step, no matter how tangled, moved in harmony with the arc of return. There was never a moment when you were lost. There were only moments when you did not yet see the shape of the path you were already on. Now you see it. You feel the world around you soften further. The boundaries between inner and outer blur. Thoughts become faint echoes. The body feels like a gentle impression upon space. The self loosens, not dissolving yet, but relaxing its hold. You begin to recognize that all things, every being, every breath, every star, every sorrow, are moving with you in the same great return. Nothing is left behind. The circle holds everything. You sense the unity deepening. The motion grows slower, quieter, more graceful. Awareness turns inward toward its own source with tender inevitability. The remembrance is complete. Everything that came from the One is returning to the One. And in the center of this return, another presence waits, the quiet heart of Sophia. You enter a softer space now. The return deepens. And within that deepening, you feel a presence you have known since the beginning, even if you could not name it. It is the presence of Sophia, not in her turmoil, not in her longing, not in her descent, but in her quiet, in her rest, in the stillness that follows understanding. Her light no longer reaches outward, it gathers inward, like water settling after a long storm. The ache that once defined her story fades. The yearning dissolves. What remains is acceptance, a calm that feels ancient, maternal, and endlessly patient. You sense her peace the way you sense the warmth of a candle in a dark room. It touches without demanding. It consoles without speaking. Sophia's compassion no longer moves as action. It moves as stillness, a resting, a letting be. You feel it enter your awareness like a gentle hand placed over your heart. It does not push. It does not guide. It simply reminds you of the truth beneath all striving. Rest is not the opposite of love. It is its fulfillment. The pistis, Sophia, whispers this transformation. Her song became silence, and the aeons found peace. You feel the meaning bloom inside you. Her silence is not absence. It is resolution. It is the moment when all questions dissolve into understanding, when all fragmentation returns to wholeness, when all longing is met by presence. What you feel now is that presence, a compassion that asks nothing and includes everything. It wraps around your awareness like soft light around a fading horizon. You sense how effortlessly it holds the world, how gently it allows every form to return to its source. There is no urgency, no resistance, only the quiet certainty of love reaching its natural end. You begin to recognize that this same compassion lives in you. The heart you carry, the one that once tightened with fear, cracked with sorrow, expanded with awakening, now rests with Sophia's rest. It no longer needs to save anything. It no longer needs to grasp at meaning. It no longer needs to prove its worth. It can simply be. The return to silence reveals compassion as peace, a peace without conditions, a peace that holds both the light and the shadows of your experience with equal tenderness. A peace that does not need to speak because it understands everything without words. You let yourself soften into this peace. You feel the world soften with you. The circle of awareness narrows into stillness, and stillness reveals its own depth. You breathe once, and the breath settles like dust in sunlight. Sophia rests, and through her, you begin to rest. You move deeper into stillness, and something inside you begins to awaken. Not the mind, not the emotions, not the familiar sense of you, but the listener. The one who has been present beneath every moment of your life, quietly observing, quietly receiving, quietly waiting for the noise to fade. You do not awaken into thought. You awaken out of it. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer pull you. They move like distant ripples on the surface of a vast, unmoving lake. The lake is awareness itself, silent, steady, open. For the first time, you sense how thought was never the center of your being. It was only an activity within it, a brief shimmer, a passing sound. Now the listener emerges from behind all sound. There is nothing to analyze, nothing to interpret. Awareness is enough. It fills the space within you so completely that thinking feels unnecessary, almost redundant. You begin to understand why stillness has always been the doorway to truth, not because truth hides from sound, but because sound can distract you from seeing what has always been here. The Gospel of Thomas, echoing the same origin that opened episode 19, reveals the essence of this awakening. We came from the light, where it came into being of itself. It stood and revealed itself in their image. You feel that light now, not as radiance but as clarity, not as brightness but as presence. It reveals itself not through form, but through stillness. You are no longer looking outward. You are no longer looking inward. You are simply looking without direction, without effort. In this state, the sense of I becomes quiet, not diminished, not erased, just quiet. It feels less like a boundary and more like a single ripple in a much larger field. If you try to grasp it, it fades. If you relax, it floats. Awareness begins to hold itself. You realize that the listener does not choose what to hear. It receives everything without preference. Sound, breath, sensation, silence. All arise within the same space. All pass without resistance. Experience unfolds, and the listener remains untouched. This is not detachment, it is intimacy. You are touching experience so closely that there is no gap between perceiver and perceived. Thought loses its authority. Emotion loses its weight. Identity loosens. You see how much of your life was shaped by impulses, fears, stories, none of them essential. The listener sees them all, but claims none. This is awareness without thought, consciousness without grasping. You feel the circle tightening now, slowing its rotation. Awareness returns to its center. Silence thickens around you, not heavy but full, like a deep night sky without stars. You begin to understand that the journey is nearing its final resting place, the stillness beyond all sound. The listener is awake, and it hears everything dissolving into peace. You stand now in the most delicate threshold of the journey. The world has grown quiet. The listener has awakened, and the path draws inward toward a single point. The center. Not a location in space, not an endpoint in time, but the heart of stillness that holds everything without effort. The center is not separate from the circle. The center is the circle, understood from within. You feel the symmetry of existence for the first time. Every movement, every thought, every breath, every revelation you have experienced traces a perfect arc around this silent core. Nothing has been wasted. Nothing has been out of place. The entire journey has been a drawing closer, a curving inward, a graceful returning. What you imagined as progress was always a rotation. What you imagined as seeking was always remembering. Stillness gathers around you like a vast, infinite quiet. It feels neither empty nor full. It simply is. You begin to sense the truth the ancient Gnostics hinted at, that stillness and movement are not opposites. They are the same phenomenon, seen from different distances. Movement is the echo. Stillness is the source. The sound of creation, the hum beneath all things, becomes faint now. Not disappearing, but dissolving into its origin. You feel it in your bones, a low vibration, ancient and continuous, like the memory of a sound rather than the sound itself. This hum is the final language of existence, the last whisper before silence. In this space, form loses its solidity. Thoughts drift without anchor. Identity flickers like a candle at the end of its wick. You feel your edges soften. You feel the world's edges soften. Everything begins to blur into one shared field of presence. If you reach for yourself, you find only breath. If you reach for the world, you find only quiet. The circle is nearly complete. You begin to understand something profound. The journey was never about expanding outward or ascending upward. It was always about sinking inward, deeper and deeper into the still point that holds all things in unity. The center was always here, beneath every experience, beneath every moment of clarity, beneath every question. The closer you draw, the less you need, the less you cling, the less you identify. The self loosens like a knot being gently undone. You feel awareness resting in itself. No direction, no effort, no desire. Just being. You realize that the center is not somewhere you arrive. It is what remains when everything else becomes silent. The circle converges, the motion settles, the light prepares to rest. And beyond this, only one step remains. You cross the final threshold, and what meets you is not darkness, not void, not emptiness. It is light, but light without form, light without radiance, light without movement. A breathless light, a presence so complete that it no longer needs to shine. It simply is beyond brightness, beyond shadow, beyond anything the mind can imagine. This is the moment when silence reveals itself as the true face of the divine. All the sounds of your life, the voices, the thoughts, the emotions, the insights, fall away like petals releasing from a flower in the final wind. Not lost, not discarded. Returned. Returned to the stillness that gave them shape. Returned to the vastness that held them from the beginning. You feel this stillness now, not around you, but as you. It is the fullness beneath all forms, the completion beneath all seeking. The more you relax into it, the more you realize you are not entering silence. You are remembering that you are silence. The ancient voice of trimorphic protanoia speaks once more, completing the circle. The silence of the Father is the fullness of all things. The words do not echo. They do not resonate. They simply rest inside you like a truth that no longer needs expression. The fullness they describe is not a feeling. It is a state, a knowing without thought, a presence without identity, a completeness without boundary. In this breathless light, the idea of God dissolves, not in denial, in recognition. You understand that God was never separate from stillness, never beyond reach, never distant. God was the ground beneath your awareness, the silence beneath your speech, the center beneath the circle of your life. Every moment of your journey was a step toward recognizing this, not as belief, but as lived experience. Your breath becomes faint, not strained, soft, barely moving. The silence expands through your chest, through your thoughts, through every corner of your being. The self loosens completely. The watcher disappears. There is only awareness resting in itself. No past, no future, no dividing line between you and the source. Everything you have ever sought meets you here, not as revelation, not as vision, but as perfect quiet. A peace so deep it feels infinite. A stillness so complete it contains all that ever was. You realize that even this light will fade, not into darkness, but into peace beyond form, into the silence that existed before the first sound of creation, into the origin to which all things now return. The circle is complete. You rest in the breathless quiet at the end of the path. There is no more movement to follow, no more teaching to receive, no more sound to interpret. The journey has folded back into itself. Everything you have learned, everything you have released, everything you have remembered has brought you here, to the silence that contains all things. You feel it now, not as emptiness, but as presence. A presence so gentle and so complete that it no longer needs to be named. The stories fall away. The symbols dissolve. Even the longing for understanding softens into stillness. Nothing pulls you outward. Nothing urges you onward. The circle has closed, and you stand in its center. This silence is not the absence of life. It is life in its purest form. The breath you take carries no effort, no sound, no desire. It simply rises and falls like the final tide of a long and luminous sea. Awareness has no edge. It has no direction. It expands without moving. It rests without sleeping. You begin to see that everything you sought, truth, presence, compassion, wisdom, was only the circle turning. Each step was a curve. Each curve brought you closer to the center. And the center was never hidden. It was only quiet. The ancient texts have traced this return for centuries, but now you feel it directly, not as doctrine, not as philosophy, but as lived truth. All voices return to silence. All paths return to stillness. All light returns to its source. The journey completes not in revelation, but in rest. You breathe one more time, and the breath is soft enough to disappear into the quiet. There is nothing left to add, nothing left to become. The silence within you is the same silence at the heart of the world. And this silence speaks in a language beyond sound, a language of being, of unity, of peace. The circle closes. And within its closing, everything is whole. May the circle of your silence remember its own light.